Welcome back to Pause to Unedit Yourself, a podcast where reflection meets transformation, where we explore the art of becoming one intentional pause at a time. I'm your host, Anoushka, and each episode offers you a chance to press pause and explore bite sized insights and soulful reflections from my own journey of introspection in the hope it will help you too on your path of personal evolution. Whether you're feeling stuck, seeking clarity, or simply wanting to expand, my hope is that this becomes a space of inspiration and deep remembering, guiding you to evolve from within and uncover the infinite potential that lives inside each and every one of you. Your time is super valuable. It's the most precious commodity. So thank you for being here and sharing the space with me. And thank you for pressing pause and choosing to journey inward and daring to become the highest expression of yourself. Thank you all for your feedback. It really helps me to shape what episodes, what content you would all like to hear. And through some of this feedback, and I've heard is that a lot more of you want to hear more about sort of thoughts and reflections around relationships and love. It seems to be very popular. So this is today's topic. It's around modern relationships, and what I've seen is there's something really interesting happening. It's an observation. We have more choice than ever before. There's more ways to meet people. There's more ways to connect. There's more ways to explore love. There's all of your dating applications where swipe left, swipe right. There's another profile. There's another conversation. There's another possibility. It almost on the surface of it, it feels like there's so much more freedom because we have so much more choice. But in reality, if we just pause for a minute and then start looking deeper, we start to see something else. Because somewhere along the way, with this abundance of choice, it seems that we have kind of traded that depth for distraction. Because let's face it, modern life it offers infinite options, not just in relationships, but in everything. From the type of jobs that you can have. There's infinite possibilities for new experiences, and new identities. And so we start to almost lose, it feels like we lose the essence of actually being present in the moment to experience. Rather, we're just kind of calculating. Actually, what if something better comes along? What if someone else is more exciting or more compatible, more aligned with the life that we imagine? And we start calculating these different what if scenarios the minute something happens, the minute that someone kind of triggers us. And slowly, without even realizing it, that aspect of love that we so seek, it starts becoming something we evaluate rather than experience. And love, it's supposed to be experienced, not a checkbox exercise. And what I've kind of come to realize, and I'm sure many of you are thinking of this in the same way, that this in this super fast-paced, dopamine-driven culture, we've actually been subtly conditioned to replace rather than repair. And if you're thinking about it, even if it comes down to like, we have our electronics, like our phone devices used to be meant to last. And now it's like every time there is a new upgrade, there's a new operating system, your old versions of your iPhones like no longer work. Even though they're in perfectly good condition, they're not going to work with the new software, right? So you have to replace it. And even our clothes, right? Because there's so much fast fashion out there, it's like there's an abundance of it. We tend to kind of dispose of of our things rather than actually repairing that hole or patching up a pair of jeans. And so that's the same kind of essence that we've kind of translated into our relationships. Because the moment someone no longer fits this version of them that we imagined, the moment they challenge us or trigger us or make us uncomfortable, we kind of think, oh, actually, I don't want this. I want something easier. I want something new. I want something shinier. Why? Have you actually asked yourself why? Well, actually, because it requires less work. But the actual reality of it, real love is rarely shiny. Real love is actually sacred. And sacred things need tending. They require patience. They require presence. And so the question then becomes, what are we really afraid of? What are we really afraid of that we start wanting to seek those distractions or those new shiny objects? Are we afraid of the other person, of what they're actually revealing about ourselves? Are we afraid of what this person is mirroring, showing us about our depth, about our fears that we don't actually want to face and that we prefer hiding and running from? Because really, true intimacy has a way of exposing the parts of us that we've spent so many years avoiding. So many years. All of our insecurities, our fears of rejection, all of those old wounds, those patterns of control and withdrawal. And for many people, it starts to feel safer to keep moving rather than to face those reflections, rather than to sit with those reflections. Because it's hard. It's hard to do that inner work. And I've talked about it on so many of my episodes, and there's an episode on inner work. It's hard to sit with it because it means coming face to face with all your shadows, all the parts of yourselves that you don't want to face. The only way is to sit with them. The only way is to recognize all of those parts of yourselves that you have hidden away, that you've compartmentalized because you just didn't want to face it. And so what happens is that we keep those relationships that might have so much potential. We keep them at the surface. We keep conversations light because we don't really want to get into that depth. We keep our emotions contained and guarded. Imagine like a castle with a gate, and you've got that moat, and so that drawbridge always stays up, rarely kind of coming down. And ultimately, in this space, we are keeping our options open. And I think what is actually being sold as modern love, I feel it's actually emotional avoidance, avoidance of being vulnerable, avoidance of commitment, avoidance of that kind of intimacy that asks us to be fully seen. Because what I've realized is that to be truly, truly, truly seen by another person, it is both beautiful, but it's absolutely terrifying. It means allowing someone to witness not only your strengths, but also your shadows, your doubts, your imperfection, your unresolved wounds. And many of us fear that if someone saw all of that, they might not stay. So what happens? We protect ourselves. And sometimes we do this by keeping an emotional distance. Sometimes we do this by sabotaging the connection before it even has the chance to deepen. And sometimes by convincing ourselves that we simply haven't met the right person yet, even though they might be right in front of us. But often, the deeper truth is that we haven't yet become ready for that kind of love that we say we want. We haven't yet developed the emotional capacity to hold that level of love. It's not just about finding the right person. Come to realize it is about becoming someone capable of depth, someone capable of honesty, someone capable of facing themselves. And relationships, they have this uncanny way of revealing the parts of us that we still need healing. They act as mirrors, mirrors that reflect our fears, that reflect our expectations, our patterns of attachment. And sometimes, unconsciously, we end up pushing people away, not because they are wrong for us, but because they reflect something within us we are not ready to see. So perhaps the real question is not why are relationships difficult? Perhaps the real question is what parts of ourselves do we encounter when we allow someone to come close? What fears appear when love begins to deepen? What stories do we tell ourselves about why it won't work? And there's a whole narrative that goes in, right? Start analyzing every single part, and those are all stories. But in essence, you also have to ask, like, where did those stories come from? Where have those beliefs come from? Because often those patterns we carry in relationships, they were not created in adulthood. No, they were learned much earlier from the love we witnessed growing up, from the ways our emotional needs were met or not met, from the beliefs we absorbed about trust, about closeness, about vulnerability. And until we begin to see those patterns clearly, we unconsciously repeat them. But something powerful happens when we become aware of these patterns. And awareness is the key thing here. Because once you become aware, we begin to move from reaction to reflection. And instead of asking, why is this person making me feel this way? We begin asking, what is this experience showing me about myself? And that shift alone changes everything because suddenly relationships stop being battles to win. They shift and they become opportunities to grow. And what I've realized is that relationships is not the absence of friction. We need that friction because how else are you going to grow? So you need that friction to grow through it. And it's growing through it is when two people bringing their worlds together that you are able to learn from each other, that you're able to grow from grow together. Those two histories, those two sets of beliefs, those two different types of nervous systems. Remember, you're all unique. You've all had your own lives before you've met each other. And of course, there's going to be like misunderstandings. Of course, there's going to be moments of discomfort. It's the reason why you're human. But within all of that friction, there lies something incredibly valuable, and that's awareness. Because the moment you have that awareness, the moment that you are able to build that trust and to start letting down your guard, the moment you allow yourself to surrender and they become a mirror to reflect parts of you that might otherwise remain hidden. And it's through that reflection that something begins to happen. That clarity comes through, that self knowledge comes through. And ultimately, in that space, in that sacred space, maturity. So perhaps real love, it's not about endlessly searching for someone new. Perhaps it is about learning to discover the depth within the person standing in front of you, seeing the many layers within one's soul, choosing presence over novelty, depth over distraction. Because the truth is, there are 1,000 versions of a person you love, and those versions only reveal themselves through time, through patience, through presence, through the willingness to stay when things become uncomfortable. So today, I invite you to pause and reflect on this question. In my relationships, am I seeking depth or am I seeking distraction? Am I open to intimacy or am I protecting myself from being fully seen? Because the kind of love many of us long for cannot grow on the surface. It can only grow in depth. And that depth requires something that modern life rarely encourages. And that's stillness, that's patience, that's presence, and the courage to choose depth over distraction. As always, I use these episodes as reminders for myself, like mini guides that you can refer to whenever you need to check in with yourself for a moment of recalibration. So do feel free to save them and share them with someone who might need to hear them. And please do share your comments and feedback. It really helps me to know what resonates for you and what you would like to hear more of. And if you want to stay connected in between the pauses, I do post on my Instagram at Press Pause Movement. There's also a newsletter, Pause Perspective, you can subscribe to. And everything is on the link in the description below. See you on the next episode.